And we are recording.
We are recording. Do we sit here or do we drive?
That's up to you. I don't know if you want to sit here and talk about the movie for a few minutes or if you wanted to go ahead and just drive.
I can do both. How we did the Jurassic Park one.
Problem is, the Jurassic World one was during daylight.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm hoping this little bitty light, for one, doesn't get warm stuck in between this, and two, provides enough light to where it can illuminate us a little bit, but also not get us in trouble, possibly. Okay, why are you guys driving with the light on?
Because I do what I want, officer. Am I being detained? Don't you see this? Okay, so we just went and saw Spectre, the newest James Bond movie.
The 24th James Bond movie, to be exact.
That's a whole lot of movies.
Basically, I'll say this. I liked the movie a lot. It has its problems, but I still think compared to maybe some of the earlier Roger Moore Bond movies, I think this is good. Of course, that's not much of a comparison because Roger Moore's movies took place so long ago and this is now. Okay, compared to Craig's second movie, Quantum, this was a definite step up, but I gotta say it did not beat Skyfall.
Well, he's the movie guru. I'm just the guy that drives and takes us to movies, and I don't watch any movies at all, so I'm probably a movie lover and movie critic's worst nightmare, but not going into this movie. The last movie I saw was Quantum, and I really liked the movie.
Yeah, you didn't see Skyfall.
Yeah, I didn't see why the MI6 headquarters was blown up or anything.
Spoiler.
Yes.
Of course, the movie's been out for a month now, so.
You'll live. But, well, I mean, like, how it got, how everything transpired back in Skyfall. So, yeah, I never saw how that happened or anything, but
I think
okay.
I think the fact that you didn't see Skyfall, you may have missed out on some of the connections.
Oh yeah, I missed out on a lot of stuff. But as far as an overall Bond movie, I think it's just, it's a Bond movie.
It's the formulaic Bond movie.
Yeah.
Bond, like you said earlier in the theater, Bond meets the action. He gets the action done. He ends up meeting the girl. After he meets the girl, he ends up meeting the bad guy. Third act goes in, and then he starts battling the bad guy. Maybe throw a henchman in there too. The henchman in this movie was played by Drax the Destroyer, Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
And his specialty was silver fingernails.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got Alicia back here in the middle, by the way.
Yeah. That's what. Yeah, that was pretty nasty. He does some nasty things with his fingernails, which you'll have to see the movie to know what nasty things are, of course.
Well, he only did it like once.
Yeah, but it's still nasty. But it's like, in my opinion, I think that Quantum Souls did beat around the bush a little bit with the classic Bond formula. I don't think it was as straightforward as the old movies, but this is exactly the formula for a Bond movie. Bond goes to fight the evil organization. He walks into a whole bunch of traps, and he gets out of them. He gets the girl. He gets the bad guy. It's just like every other Bond movie. It's just a classic, timeless formula that always works, and it's got a lot of good, refreshing humor thrown into it. I think that
yeah, you're right. There was a lot of humor in this movie.
If anything, the humor was,
which doesn't detract from it.
Yeah, it's not like a lot of the new movies do, where they just try to, oh, it's a funny movie because we can pop witty and raunchy jokes. No, it's the kind of humor that you would expect for Bond. Constantly sarcastic, constantly has a comeback that just will leave you in shin splints. It's just awful. Good.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Here's the way I see it. James Bond takes the situation and tries to find the humor in the situation. He's kind of like John McClane from Die Hard in that sense. Except James Bond's got a little bit more handle in the situation than Bruce Willis.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen any of the Bond movies, and I thought this one was fantastic.
You've never seen a Bond movie?
I've never seen a Bond movie. story.
Which, I guess you'd be the perfect perspective for anybody who's heard of James Bond and is kind of interested in it.
I think I'm going to look up on Netflix and see.
Yeah, it's definitely because like I said, I vaguely remember seeing the old ones, but Quantum was really my last one. This movie, I wouldn't necessarily go to say it's a good entry-level Bond film, but if you were to walk into the theater and, you know, oh, my movie was canceled, what am I going to see? I can see James Bond. You're not going to get the whole story, but you're going to get the Bond experience of what the creme fraiche of what Bond's about the classic get the bad guy, get the girl formula.
Yeah, that's the one thing I got to dock against this movie is you have to have prior knowledge of previous films to really understand everything that's going on in here. And not just Daniel Craig's films, you kind of maybe have to have a little bit of knowledge from some of Connery's earlier films.
Yeah.
Specifically, You Only Live Twice. Because that's the movie. You don't like that title, do you? Yeah, the Bond titles back in the day had some really funky titles.
I thought you were referring to the guy never dying.
Well, but no, in the
that's just all Bond villains. At least 2 times. You have to kill them at least 2 times for them to actually be dead. Otherwise, they come back.
They're like comic book villains. They're not dead unless you see a body, and sometimes even if you see a body, they're still not dead.
Exactly.
But no, what I'm trying to say is about You Only Live Twice. That was the first movie that introduced you to Blofeld's face. Granted, he was played by body doubles in earlier films like From Russia with Love and Thunderball, but You Only Live Twice is where they put him into the movie full circle. You see his face, you see the classic look that Dr. Evil from Austin Powers kind of spoofed. He's got his scar across his eye, he's bald-headed, and he's got his gray suit and his Cheshire cat, I think that's what you call it. But
fancy white fancy feast cat.
It's a very pretty kitty.
I was wondering why he had a cat. Is that just an evil thing?
Yes.
It's a trope. It's a trope from earlier villainy things from like the 60s. But basically James Bond Blofeld perfected that.
Yeah, prior knowledge definitely required of the early Bond films. It helps, but you probably definitely need to see the last 3 Bond films to get a full circle of knowledge.
Because they reference James Bond's girl from Casino Royale, Vesper Lynn, quite a bit. And here's what I'm going to say about that. Vesper and Bond had a really good relationship. You were with them from the beginning. You could tell that they had chemistry just right off the bat. And they were slowly building up this whole subplot where Vesper was going to make Bond leave the service. And then something tragic happens, and of course he stays with the service.
Always.
The Bond girl in this movie is... They're trying their very best to make her kind of like the new Vesper, because there is a scene where the girl actually says to James Bond, "I love you." Now, of course, he doesn't say that because that's not James Bond. But I'm thinking, oh, you're trying too hard, guys. I'm not feeling it.
I think minor spoiler, not anything about the movie, but Bond does return. It says at the end credits. Not going to say what, of course, transpires at the end, but it's going to be different, or rather difficult, for him to come back. It's a pretty conclusive ending, but I think that just leaves it open for more room for Bond returning. It makes them get ready for another grand Bond entrance.
Yeah, you're right.
Interesting to see where they take it.
Well, there's these rumors going around that Daniel Craig has said he's done with James Bond after this movie, which I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, just like Robert Downey Jr.'s done being Iron Man. Yeah, right.
Until she was killed off in Skyfall, Judi Dench, who played the previous M, was always saying back in the past, "Oh, this is my last movie, this is my last movie," and it never came to fruition. Going ahead back to the ending, like you were saying, for me, somebody who's been invested with James Bond, specifically since the movie GoldenEye came out, because I was about 6 years old when GoldenEye first came out. And
Best N64 game ever if you haven't played it.
Plug for the N64 game.
Highly recommend it. Spend the $25.
But there's something that happens to a landmark of the James Bond franchise at the end of the movie, and since I was,
if you know what we're talking about, you saw it coming. Don't act like you didn't see it coming.
They foreshadow it just a bit at the beginning of the movie with James Bond and M's guide, or Ide, I should say, Tanner, driving down the Thames River on a boat. But it's like, wow, this is just amazing in a way, because I grew up with this thing being a part of James Bond for the longest time, and to see them destroy it is just kind of crushing, to be honest with you. Granted, of course, it's not as crushing as when Judi Dench passed away at Skyfall. Oh, camera shifted. But
Back. Hi.
yeah, camera shifting. What's up with that? I thought that spider walker thing was supposed to keep that from happening. Anyway.
We're horrible, guys.
Yeah, whoever comes across this video, you'll have to understand we are not doing very well with this stand here.
We had a microphone and the battery was dead, so hopefully you guys can hear us.
Maybe just have to edit this part out later. This is ruining my video and I don't like it.
I want to get some McDoubles. I love McDoubles. They raised the price, that makes me upset. I gotta live that McChicken life most of the time. Alright, we're back.
Hi. Yeah, not as crushing as when Judi Dench was killed off at the end of Skyfall, because it was like losing a grandma when she passed away. But it's like, wow, you're taking this staple of James Bond lore and you're crumbling it down, which in all actuality kind of fits with some of the themes of the movie, where the villain has been behind some of Daniel Craig's Bond's tragedies. And it's like, this guy knew James Bond back when they were both kids, and he is just jealous of James Bond, which in regards to this Blofeld character, I don't like the way they did that either. They don't need to make Blofeld and James Bond connected by pseudo blood brothers. It was just fine where James Bond stumbled across this organization and Blofeld was just this guy who made things personal for James Bond. I don't think they need to make it familial connections.
I thought that's one of the things I kind of noticed about it. They tried to do that, but they didn't elaborate on it enough. It was like, oh hey,
it's like, Daddy loved you more than me, even though I was his blood son. You were just a little cuckoo that came into our nest of eggs.
yeah, they elaborated on it for like 5 minutes, and then it's like it never even existed. It's like it didn't happen. They didn't flesh it out enough.
And there was something from the movie I was talking about earlier, You Only Live Twice. I was talking about the scar. They kind of shoehorned that in. It was a nice callback, and there are some really nice callbacks in this movie to other things in the James Bond universe. But it's like, if you're speaking objectively, yeah, they kind of shoehorned that scar into the movie.
But overall, I think the movie is a really solid movie, especially if you were to just walk into the theater not seeing a Bond movie before. It gives you the Bond experience. You will be lost on the story for the most part.
Just try to go in with an experienced Bond person.
Yes, like him.
Like him.
And that's where I say this. You can choose to go watch earlier Bond movies, but you definitely have to see all of Daniel Craig's Bond movies, which I think that may be a given for everybody. But definitely see Casino Royale. I leave it up to you whether or not you want to see Quantum of Solace.
It's alright.
But see Casino Royale, Skyfall, and definitely watch Spectre to kind of get what's going on here. Which, I'm going to say this. I love how they have connections to what happened in Skyfall, particularly with the building and the fact that the previous M died. I do not like the fact that they made the villain in Skyfall a part of this organization, because there was nothing hinted in Skyfall that Javier Bardem's character from Skyfall was had anything to do with Spectre, the organization in this movie. I mean, that just seemed completely out of left field. Okay, I am so sorry whoever watches this video, whoever comes across this video. This is just not working out. This little spider thingamajig that's supposed to be holding the camera up.
I think it needs stronger spider legs. You got like a garden spider. You need the black widow.
Spiders need to be squashed.
What other things would you like?
This is probably going to be one of my very first videos. I mean, I've done other videos, but just as a learning curve, I'm not probably going to edit any of this out. That way I know what to prepare for next time.
One day, whenever he's a famous movie reviewer,
Yeah, we do.
Well, I wish I could be. I watch a lot of them on YouTube, and they're light years ahead of me. They've been doing this for 5 or 6 years now.
You have to start from somewhere.
You start somewhere.
That's true.
With McDonald's.
Well, we passed McDonald's already. But, bottom line, even though that the villain, some aspects of the villain in this movie were kind of rushed, kind of not elaborated upon, Christoph Waltz did a very good job with what he was given. He was sinister enough, and just words are escaping me right now. What am I trying to say? He had enough sinister to him.
Maniacal.
He was very maniacal. And I think if they would have planned this out better, because the movie looks beautiful. The soundtrack, I love the soundtrack. The movie looks beautiful. There are instances of shaky cam, which I'm getting really sick of that.
There are a few, if you're really big on graphics, there are a few little things where I wasn't even watching, and I just watched it happen. And I wasn't watching for it, and I watched it happen, and I was like, wow, that was really bad CGI.
Yeah.
Like of course, during the explosions, there's no spoiler, every Bond movie has explosions. There's some parts of the explosion where I pieces of buildings will fall, and I'm like, wow, I could have probably done better with that in Adobe After Effects, and I have no previous movie editing experience. But for the most part, good explosions, if you like explosions.
Yeah, whenever I'm to the point where if you hear people say that, like just normal people, yeah, we're not trained professionals. We probably couldn't do it ourselves, but the people behind these effects are trained professionals. We expect better of them.
I mean,
but this is just, we digress. This does not take away from the movie.
no. Like they were talking about the villains, if you have a problem with things that will make you cringe, there are a couple of cringy scenes in this movie where it's like not necessarily the violence aspect, but stuff that happens that the evil characters do to other people. You're like, oh man, I cannot watch that.
Or I have to plug my ears.
Yeah, there's some unpleasant sounds.
Are you sure? I mean, I didn't really catch any of that. I mean, despite the fact where Dave Bautista's introduced, the thought of what he was doing, because you could see what he was doing, but they weren't showing graphic stuff. But
well, whenever Bond first meets the villain and he is interacting with him.
You're talking about
before the
you're talking about the fight scene.
No, during the watch alarm scene.
Oh, how did I forget that?
Yes.
How did I forget that?
That is pretty intense and slightly disturbing. So
yeah, it is.
That's something.
Bottom line is, it involves a tiny pinpoint drill
being drilled into people's heads.
Sounds kind of like the dentist's office.
Except it's going into the side of someone's face.
And it controls your brain.
No, it doesn't control your brain, but what Christoph Waltz was describing he could do with this instrument was terrifying.
But of course, James Bond's a hoss. And
I cannot believe I forgot that scene. But
Shame.
I am so sorry. I'm getting really sick of this. This is getting freaking ridiculous. Camera, stay put. But, when I said earlier that the movie is good, but it has its flaws, there's tiny little plot holes here and there. Like, there's a scene where James Bond goes to Austria to meet this guy that he had previous encounters with back in, like, Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. And, there are cameras in this house. And what does James Bond do? Nothing.
Yeah, he even looks up and sees the camera with the red light. He's just like, oh, it's a camera. He doesn't do one of those classic quirky Bond things where he's like, oh, shoots the camera. No, he just looks at it and walks away.
This is used, well,
it's used later on in the movie.
it's not used against him per se. It's used against a character who is close to the man that James Bond goes to. And it's like, I'm thinking, Bond, you're a spy. Wouldn't you want to take care of any evidence that shows you were here, just in case the people that you are trying to defeat come and follow your breadcrumbs?
No, he's James Bond.
There is one point that I did not understand. If this person was trying to make it seem as if you were not there, with it being like so dilapidated and dusty, and yet there's cameras going. That didn't make sense.
You're gonna have to excuse the Dutch angle. I'm sorry.
Gotta have a way to advance the plot somehow.
Yeah.
The scene where James Bond, which, here's something else. There is another Bond girl in this movie played by Monica Bellucci. Nice to see Monica Bellucci completely wasted. She was in this movie for a good 5 minutes max. But she gives Bond an address or sorts to go to where there's going to be a meeting between all the heads of Spectre. And I will say this, the lighting and some of the character interactions with Blofeld and the lack of music builds so much atmosphere and so much tension in this scene. It's like, I know what's going to happen, but I'm on the edge of my seat at the same time, which is where I'm saying there's a lot of this movie that is beautifully crafted. I think what the problem was the script.
Yeah, that's one of the things I did like. They deducted a lot of movies nowadays use like the creeping rising tones to build suspense around every corner. There's a lot of scenes.
I'm sorry, I gotta interject. You said creeping tones, and for some reason it brought me to this. There's a cheap jump scare in this movie.
You jumped hardcore.
Cheap jump scare.
No, I didn't jump because I saw this in the trailer. This was in the trailer, so I knew it was coming. But I'm still thinking, really, people? You're gonna use the crow jumping out from the side of the wall and scare James Bond?
Silent Hill featuring James Bond.
I mean, it's like, you guys have got to see the videos that are on YouTube of these different movie reviewers talking about their experiences with horror films and cheap jump scares. Like I said, I digress, but why did you have to have that in there?
Because it's gotta have a cheap jump scare somewhere. But that's the only cheap jump scare. It does, like I said, a lot of movies nowadays use the creeping tones to build suspense. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that are suspenseful just by the actions that are happening. There's a lot of scenes where they completely leave out the music. There goes the camera. And they completely leave out the music and just use Bond creeping through the different locations, just around every corner, every new little trickle and trail that the villain has left for him. He discovers that builds the suspense. Like, what's gonna happen next? Is someone gonna pop out with a gun? Is he gonna walk into a room with a trap? Is he gonna meet the villain? They just leave it completely to the script and what's happening. They don't bank on using music to have to build suspense. It can build suspense and maintain it on its own.
Yeah, like, even though we said the script has its problems, it still has its ups. Because even the fight scene between James Bond and Dave Bautista, when that first started going off, there was no music going whatsoever in the scene. The soundtrack was not only the punches and the kicks, but it was also the sound of the train going along the railroad.
Exactly. Yeah, they definitely did a good job of where to put music.
Or lack thereof. Letting natural sound make its own music.
There's something about someone getting punched in the face that just can create its own music.
Yeah, I'm gonna conduct an orchestra with fisticuffs.
Exactly.
Fisticuffs.
There is a good, it's not necessarily a reference, but if anyone watches the show Person of Interest, there's a good reference. The main character in Person of Interest likes to shoot people in the legs instead of killing them. There's a couple of good leg shots in this movie, so you may find some humor in there.
I've never.
Yeah, there's
Again, I apologize for this camera going everywhere. Whoever comes across this video, I don't expect many people, but whoever does, I am sorry.
Yeah, thanks for putting up with us. But there are a couple good kneecap shots. That's one of the things that
They didn't take any arrows to the knee.
Yeah, that's one of the things I do like. It's not always, boom, shot to the head, boom, shot to the head. It's just, pop to the torso or to kill him or disable him by shooting him in the leg or the arm. Good Bond feel, not a, Bond is referenced a lot as a, assassin, assassin for hire, person paid to kill. But he definitely still, shows his righteousness throughout this movie of, he's doing it for the greater good of Britain and also himself.
The greater good.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think this is just one tiny little last thing before we end the video. And this is just probably me nitpicking. I hate the fact that they keep calling James Bond an assassin. That seems like too casual a label for him.
He's an assassinato.
No, he's a spy.
Yes.
You don't always have to kill somebody.
That's one of the things that I did kind of notice. It lacked a lot of spy gadgets in this movie. There was...
Because Craig's movies are supposed to be more pseudo-realistic compared to earlier Bond movies.
I do like the spy gadgets, though.
Well, the car that he got in the movie had a couple of spy gadgets. Granted, they weren't loaded for comedic effect, but...
there's a...
Needless to say, good old Frank Sinatra's song "New York, New York" got a shout out in the scene.
Yeah.
Pretty much the only spy gadgets are there's a fancy car, which has a good car chase. Every Bond movie needs a good car chase. And there's a fancy watch. And that's about it. I like the old GoldenEye watch.
I miss the laser watch.
The laser watch, it is...
Which Skyfall had a nice little GoldenEye reference, but anyway.
But yeah, definitely if you're a fan of Bond gadgets, don't plan on it. Not many.
Well, despite all the camera failures and all of our ramblings and mumblings, I hope whoever finds this video finds something to enjoy. Everybody's got to start somewhere. This is where we start.
This is made in a Jeep Patriot driving down crap Oklahoma roads by little pocket light at 11:17 in the night. So we're just trying to get this going.
Thank you for being on this journey with us,
thank you.
and have a good day, everybody.